Hi, everybody. This is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and these are your horoscopes for January of 2019. And this horoscope in particular is for Scorpios. So you can check this out if you're a Scorpio rising or a Scorpio sun sign. All right, let's take a look. So the month is not messing around. The first month of the year is stacked with a lot of action, 2 eclipses. I mean, it's just right out the gate. Sun is conjoining with Saturn. Everything's basically happening in Capricorn, by the way, which is your 3rd house. So that's where we're going to focus. And these are a little bit more concise and a little less detailed. I'm not going to be manipulating the chart a lot in these, just simply because these are late in coming out due to the end of my Kickstarter and New Year's holiday and things like that. So try to keep this brief and get right to the point. Sun conjoins with Saturn to open the year January 5th. There's a solar eclipse in your 3rd house in Capricorn. Mercury will enter Capricorn in the first week or so of the month. You have Mercury entering Capricorn and then immediately making a square to Mars in Aries. This will take place around January 8th. By the 13th, you've got Mercury conjoining Saturn in Capricorn in the 3rd house. You also have the Sun getting together with Pluto by about the 10th or 11th. It's just like one thing after another. Then Mars by the 21st is getting into a square with Saturn in Capricorn. So, some dynamic activity here between the 3rd and the 6th overall, mostly the 3rd house. So what does that mean for you? Well, this is the first thing. There's a couple other things we're going to look at, but this is the first and biggest set of transits to consider. Your 3rd house was traditionally called the joy of the moon, and it was called goddess. So the 3rd house has a lot to do with the ever-changing environment of life, whether that's your neighbors in your neighborhood, your daily kind of hustle and bustle. It's related to siblings and kin, people that you're familiar with on a kind of daily basis. It's also related to the mind, to writing, communicating, technology. It's related to messengers. So the 3rd house emphasis is right now in your life has everything. A lot of it comes down to your relationship with your siblings and to things that are happening in their lives that are very significant, or in your relationship with your siblings. This could be more challenging potentially with Capricorn energy happening there. You've also got an eclipse signaling something new happening there. So again, just generally speaking, stuff with siblings can be dynamic right now. Let's just call it that. On the other hand, this is a house that could have to do with learning something, a new form of technology you're using. Communication dynamics and relationships are shifting. Your perceptions, your mindset is changing. So these are the kinds of things that tend to shift when the 3rd house is emphasized. Also, what are you devoted to? How do you spend your daily your daily life? What are the routines and rhythms like in your daily environment? That's a very 3rd house kind of thing, and a lot of change happening there right now. Now, again, Saturn is necessity. And so Saturn-Pluto is about the deep, deep changes that have to do with, that are made of necessity. You're also looking at the 3rd house, 6th house dynamic, which has a lot to do with the practical implementation of ideas and thoughts and communication or speech, or embattled speech, difficulty, mental labor, mental stress, because you're looking at Mars, the god of war, in the 6th house, which is traditionally called bad fortune and the house or joy of Mars. The 6th house is associated with sort of laborsome, difficult, grueling qualities, also chronic health problems. And yet it's associated with military training and military service. And anything that you basically fight for, or when you get into the trenches and fight for something, or when you're dealing with the difficulties of life as a social worker, as a nurse or a doctor, or a lot of people confuse the 6th house as a house of health. It's not a house of health. It's a house of all different kinds of difficulties and hard work, some of which can be done in the spirit of service, some of which may involve suffering or illness, and you may be a part of that. When you take all of that and throw it in with a bunch of 3rd house planets in Capricorn this month, you're looking at laboring to learn something, laboring in conflict in speech or communication. You're looking at different kinds of challenges mentally, or again, possibly with siblings or neighbors, learning things and trying to implement them. So that's the kind of mood of the month, you could say. Learning something that is of practical benefit, again, or implementing some new changes, a different mindset, and trying to work it into reality. This month also contains another interesting dynamic from Jupiter around the 13th of the month in Sagittarius, making a square to Neptune in Pisces in your 5th house. 2nd to 5th house dynamics are also very interesting, very busy for you, actually a lot of 2019. But that has to do with finances and money, and also with recreation and pleasure. So how are you spending your money, and are you spending it on, for example, are you going to the bar all the time and wasting your money? You know, like a lot of, I just remember back in college, I was working, waiting tables, you know, and it would just spend so much of what I earned right away on, like, you know, going out and having fun right after work. This is kind of a 2nd house, 5th house dynamic. The value of your time, energy, money, and resources, 2nd house things, your values, and how they are positively or negatively impacting your life, especially when you're looking at 5th house topics like fun, recreation, pleasure, creativity, sexuality, joy, children. So sometimes a trans like this comes along and you see you're spending money in trying to help your kids, where you're looking at things or surrounding money and children, or expenses and joy and pleasure, lifestyle and recreation. Those kinds of things there can be some deep lessons around them. Jupiter Neptune is very inspiring, very expansive, very uplifting, can be about spending money or reinvesting yourself in things that are creatively fulfilling right now. That can be a really sort of beautiful part of this transit. It can be very sort of eye-opening and imaginative. But and spiritual, frankly, this can be about spiritual renewal in your life too, but it will also challenge you to see things clearly, to be discerning, to be practical, and that's part of that 3rd house Capricorn emphasis. So on the 21st of the month, you're going to have a major lunar eclipse in your 10th house, which is the house of career. You're going to see some big shifts or changes after a year and a half worth of eclipses in your 10th house of career. One more big substantive change coming up in career, but it's going to, it's going to be the last one. So things are going to wind down a little bit after this. You could see changes of job, changes in the workplace, changes with bosses, changes in terms of what you want to do overall. But there's been emphasis on the 10th house of career for you for a while now. One last eclipse there suggesting some more big changes to come, at least in the next couple of months. All right. Then on January 22nd, to close off the month, there's a Venus-Jupiter conjunction in your 2nd house in Sagittarius. I really like that in terms of windfalls or, gain or promotion in terms of earning money or positive investments, benefits that come through friends, or in particular sometimes women with Venus and Jupiter. The wisdom of women and how you may invest in something that can grow in time. But this can also be about extravagance, indulgence. It's like that saying, don't go to the grocery store on an empty stomach. It's kind of a Venus-Jupiter saying too, like, be careful that you don't overspend or overindulge when Venus and Jupiter come to town. So that's on January 22nd, really sort of closes out the month. That's what I've got for you this month, Scorpios. I hope that this is interesting. I'd love to hear your stories. Please leave feedback on the YouTube page there, and I will look forward to checking in with you guys again next month in February. Okay, take care. Bye.